Billy. Today we have the honor of celebrating the life of the greatest Atlanta Brave, Henry Aaron. We're here because we all loved Hank, but we're really here because Hank loved all of us. Pretty amazing thought, and what an extraordinary man. Billy, I want to thank you for letting us all be here with you today and your family to join the fans from around the world who are just outpouring this unbelievable love for our hero, Hank. Of course, Hank would scold all of us for making such a fuss about him. He was so humble and self-effacing that it was unthinkable to him that we would have such a gathering after he was gone. But of course, no one deserves it more. So Hank, we always listen to your wise counsel, but this one time we may have to follow a different path so that we can all pay homage to what you have meant to every one of us. The common thread among most of the speakers today is that we all have forged a deep relationship with Hank and Billy through the game of baseball. I, of course, owe much to Henry for the special advice and guidance he has given me over the years about Major League Baseball and the Atlanta Braves. But I'm going to leave the baseball experiences with Hank for others to describe and offer a few other views of the many talents of my friend. I got to know Hank in the middle to late 1970s. We spent some time together in the Braves offices working there, and we started playing racquetball together weekly to get some exercise. What a surprise I was in for. Hank could have been a professional racquetball player. People would stop at the back of the court because the sound when he hit the ball. Those wrists and forearms compressed the ball like few around had ever seen. Needless to say, he prevailed in most of our matches, but it was truly unbelievable to watch him play. We spent almost 10 years together on the Turner Broadcasting Board of Directors. In business, he was a quick study and participated heavily in some of the most complex business deals. When Henry spoke, it was like the old E.F. Hutton ads where you could hear a pin drop and everyone listened intently. One board meeting in the late 80s, I came to regret Hank's honesty and straightforwardness. I was delivering a presentation on the state of the Braves that year, and I focused on their offensive capability in the upcoming season, with perhaps a touch of hyperbole. In the middle of my remarks to the board, John Malone interrupted, and he pointed to Hank and he said, "Hank, what's your opinion?" Hank dutifully responded, quote, "The team is so slow it would take 4 singles to score a run." Well, that ended my presentation, and his comments were, of course, spot on. And incidentally, we did not have a very good season. Former board members still laugh about it to this day, and it upheld Hank's reputation in the boardroom as a straight shooter and a great board member. Hank was a senior executive at Turner Broadcasting during my years as CEO. I depended on him greatly for advice and direction for the company, whether it was news, entertainment, sports. He was always on the pulse of everything. We had more stars stopping by the 14th floor of CNN Center to see Hank than we had in our Hollywood movies. He definitely kept it lively. I just learned this last night. In 1990, the newly launched CNN Airport channel was not doing very well. I asked Hank to get involved. I had forgotten about this. Sure enough, in a few months after visiting with airport leaders around the country, the new network took off amazing. So anyone who has ever enjoyed CNN at an airport around the world has Hank Aaron to thank for that. Yes, he was a man of many talents. Hank was an entrepreneur, and his success with his fast food restaurants and car dealerships showed professional athletes across all sports that there was a successful life once they retired. Hank personally ran the Atlanta BMW dealership, as we heard earlier. Where did he find the time? He was a success at selling cars, and I know firsthand because one day I visited the dealership after he told me to come down and pick out any BMW I wanted. He'd make me a great deal. Well, I found a beautiful sports sedan, wrote a check, and drove off. I still have that car, and I cherish it. I will never part with it because it has Hank's personal touch on it. Hank and I traveled to many spring trainings together. We have a tradition of having a dinner at spring training the night before the first full squad workout. Me, Hank, Bill Bartholomew, our manager, general manager, and senior executive staff are regular attendees, and we toast to the new season. Henry always looked forward to that dinner and to each new season, talking to the young players and all the excitement which comes with spring training. It will be very difficult this year without my friend. And I and the entire organization will miss him greatly. Thank you.